first speaker this morning is Harvey Ivey. We introduced Harvey yesterday, so I won't go through his bio again. What I will say is that I've been working with Harvey for about 8 years now, and I can tell you from experience he is very passionate about technology and leveraging technology to improve safety and security, but he's also very passionate about developing people, and I think that is very reflective in the team that he has helped to build at Southern Company. So with that, I want to welcome Harvey Ivey.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Yesterday was a great day. A lot of good information, and thank you for that event last night. I learned a lot about oil rigs and drilling that I'd always wondered how all that stuff works, so that was very good. Thank you. It's very, very nice. All right, we heard a lot yesterday, a lot of scary stuff, so I'm going to try not to do too much scary stuff. There's probably folks coming behind me who can hit that again. But I want to really talk about just some experiences we've had in Southern Company. And we've labeled this discussion trying to find balance in 4 dimensions, because we all know we have a lot of stuff coming at us from all directions. Anybody in here ever feel unbalanced? I didn't say unhinged, but unbalanced. I think we all have many things coming at us. We in Southern Company have spent a lot of time and effort on safety, and we've gotten good results from that. We are faced with regulatory requirements that are changing almost continuously. We can't relax our performance, though, can we? Safety and security aren't really excuses for relaxing performance. They're part of how you get performance. And then last, and not necessarily last in order of importance, but just last on this list, is that cybersecurity is base technology that allows you to do your job. And so I want to talk about some of the areas, some of the things that we've done, and some of the things that have contributed to some success in all these areas. There's not a silver bullet here. You can't solve all problems, easily, but I think we've learned a few things along the way that could help. All right, when you talk about safety, is Stan Zeisman in here? Stan had a great presentation yesterday, and I went up to him and talked to him afterwards, because his company and our company have been on kind of parallel tracks in the area of safety. Does anybody in here know what a recordable injury is? All right, my definition of a recordable injury is it's what the government thinks an injury is. Right? I mean, to me, that term recordable injury has no value. As a matter of fact, I think it may have done the industry a disservice, because we've categorized things and we spend a lot of time in the past trying to make sure things didn't fall in that category. I can tell you, in our experience in Southern Company, we've come a long way. 30 years ago, I've been in this industry 40 years, so 30 years ago I can remember at one of our facilities we would have more accidents in 1 month that fit that recordable definition than our whole fleet has now in a year. So that's a significant amount of progress over that amount of time. But we didn't get there really focusing on recordables. We did that early on, we focused on them, but it didn't really help us make a lot of progress, because that's very reactionary. What we figured out is you got to get in front of the accident. Once the accident's happened, once you got to tell the government you had an accident, all you can do then is some forensics on what happened. You can't do anything to avoid it. So we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how do you avoid the accident in the first place. And on the slide here, you see a bunch of different colored boxes. All the boxes wouldn't fit on this slide of all the proactive kind of programs that we're implementing or have implemented, because like everything else, remember we talk in cybersecurity about defense in depth. You got to apply that same concept in safety. You got to have layers to help you be safer. But one of the things that's been very effective for us the last few years is an observation-based program that we call STEP, Safety Together everyone's participation. And in the step process, we go out and we have observers watching other folks do their task and then giving them immediate feedback if they see anything good or an opportunity. And we literally have thousands of those observations every year, probably a couple thousand every month across our fleet. Well, that's good that you're giving folks feedback, but we've actually collected that data over time, and it's gotten so refined now that in a couple of cases, we've gotten good enough to start predicting where our next accident might happen based on the kind of observations we're seeing. And so we can proactively go out and address, some of our folks are not wearing all their fall protection that they need on this kind of job. So let's make sure before we start these kind of jobs, we always have a very robust discussion about the expectations for fall protection. So getting in front of the process, and again, you can translate almost everything I'm going to talk about today to cybersecurity, because you got to get in front of the problem. Once it's happened, all you can do is forensics. Another thing that we've done, which is represented by those little boxes on the bottom, is that we realized we were spending just as much time, because it was a recordable in some cases, on a bee sting as we did a potential fall from height. Which one's going to hurt you worse? All right? Now, it's a potential fall from height. Nobody got hurt, but we saw something that said somebody did something that could have put them at jeopardy of falling some distance, and we know that has tragic results. The bee sting, unless you're allergic, you're probably going to be okay the next day. But we were actually putting more effort into the bee sting because it was recordable. Anybody else? Can anybody relate to that scenario? Yeah, I see a lot of heads nodding. And now we're focused on a whole category, a whole new category, and this is a similarity to Stan's presentation. We call it PSIF, Potential Serious Injury and Fatality. So a PSIF event, even if nobody got a scratch, automatically goes to the top of the chart compared to somebody who slipped in the parking lot. They may have actually gotten injured by their slip, but I can do a lot more, protecting somebody from an arc flash event or a fall from heights than I can about somebody slipping in a parking lot. So those are a couple of things that have helped us tremendously, I think, is getting in front of the accident, doing proactive things to find out where the weaknesses in our systems are, and then focusing your attention on the things that really can make a difference. Okay, let's talk about another fun topic, regulations. Anybody in here deal with regulations? We all do, of some kind. But I think in the electric utility industry, I honestly believe we get more than our fair share. We're regulated so many different ways, on so many different timelines, to do so many different things. It's really amazing. It's very difficult just to keep up with all the rules that we're supposed to be in compliance with. So this is all the things that we're dealing with right now and have been dealing with just the last few years. And it's not really as impressive on that chart as it is in real life, because some of these words represent billions of dollars of investment, and they take multiple years to implement. So we're continuously dealing with the ramifications of changing regulation. All right, a lot of this regulation is for very good reason. I'm not arguing that it's unnecessary, but think about if I'm going out building a scrubber on the back of a power plant. That takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of money, takes a lot of people, takes a lot of time, scheduling outages. What does that do to my available resources to do other things like cybersecurity or even safety that we just talked about? So again, you got to find the balance. And some of those requirements are overlapping, and some of them actually contradict each other. They conflict with each other, which makes life more interesting. So this, I would call this an unbalancing influence in our discussion. It was really, there's some good things that came out of the safety discussion to help find a little balance. I'm not going to give you anything here that helps you. Regulation typically doesn't help you find too much balance. It may be good stuff. I'm not saying it's not, but I'd say it's pushing down on the teeter-totter. All right, and let's get more specific. In our world, we deal with NERC-CIP. And NERC-CIP has gone through an evolution. There have been several versions of the NERC-CIP requirements. So we got to come to the cybersecurity party early in the utility industry. It looks like we're going to get a stay. Party's not over. And it's amazing as these regulations have evolved. You know, we talked yesterday about, fortunately, the industry has had a voice in these regulations. So you see version 4 died before it ever got to maturity. Version 5 got preempted by version 6. You know, because there has been that collaborative effort, you know, we were able to convince our regulators that, hey, you know, we know where you're trying to go. This interim step is just going to cause more confusion than help. So let us work with you and get to a better place. And so as a result, I think we are getting to a better place. And again, I would ask, as you're implementing these kind of regulatory requirements, what resources are needed to do this? Aren't they the same resources you need for performance and for safety and for reliability and these other important things? So you got to find the balance there and doing the right thing at the right time. So one of the things that as we were looking through ways to find balance, to move resources to better uses in this process, we realized that we had access to a lot of data. Obviously, we pull in a lot of data, and if we did analytics on that data, that we might be able to relieve some of the burden. And so one of the things that we've been looking at is our maintenance history. And we found by looking at our maintenance that at one of our sites, we had 780 total PMs for 15 work locations. And think of a location as a piece of equipment. So 780 PMs on 15 pieces of equipment. And over 5 years, some of that equipment had never failed, even though we'd been touching it every week. And so that makes you ask the question, if you're touching it every week and you haven't had any kind of failure, does that mean your PM process is working really, really well, or does that mean you're doing way more than you need to do? We believe it's way more than we need to do. So we're actually digging in and letting the data try to help us determine how often do we need to do that. If I cut that back from every 7 days to, say, once a quarter, think about all the man hours that would be saved in the process. And our history says more than likely we won't see a reduction in reliability as a result of that. If you haven't had a failure in 5 years, from any other source besides the thing you're PMing, you probably are in pretty good shape to back off. So we're trying to let the data point us in directions that help us with the resource loading. All right, so what are some of the things we've learned along the way? We talked about this, I think the safety pretty well. One of the things that we're learning from regulations is that we spend so much time proving that we did what the regulation says we need to do as compared to actually doing the thing, that it's forced us to think real hard about how do you set up your effort to solve the problem as best you can so that the evidence that you did it is easier to collect. Because if you separate those and you do them, and that is a strong tendency, there are reasons for doing it two different ways, but if you can think through how do I comply but at the same time do the protection that I need, and the evidence is easily collected. Now, you may take a little more effort on the front end, but it makes your life so much easier, and you don't duplicate so many of your resources. So we put a lot of effort in trying to do that. We try not to separate the compliance from the actual thing that we're doing and try to build the evidence in. A lot of our standards have something we call evidence of compliance. So we issue a standard internally, and we also tell the end user, or this is what you're going to have to do to prove to me that you did what I asked you to do. So as they're doing the thing, they can think about, well, if I do one more step here, I've got my evidence. I know that I've done what I said I was going to do. And it has to be baked in. Cybersecurity has to be baked in. You can't. We talked about yesterday how the internet grew up without cybersecurity as a consideration. Well, that's very difficult now to go back and fix that. Well, as you're building any new process in an industrial environment, in a production environment, if you don't think about cybersecurity on the front end, then you're going to spend more money and time fixing it later. Fortunately, in our world, the folks who support our control systems are part of the organization that also designs the control system. So we're working, our group, and a lot of them are here today, are closing that feedback loop. You know, they have that ability now to support it in the field and then feed that back to the design part of the organization so that we build the stuff in and don't have to retrofit protection. All right, so a lot of things coming at us from a lot of directions. So one of the things that we had an opportunity to do, because we're currently moving our headquarters, we had the opportunity to address what we call our monitoring and diagnostic center. We had 2 desks in the current location that were focused on traditional, what we call M&D. They were watching our fleet of plants for certain operating parameters, and they were doing some advanced pattern recognition to see, is there some anomaly in the way this piece of equipment's operating. We've been doing that now for several years. It's almost like an operator looking over the operator's shoulder, looking into the process he's controlling, trying to help him identify problems before they happen, hopefully. And since 2010, our M&D Center has had over 17,000 findings that are observations. So they've seen things that they were then able to call an operator and say, you got a problem. Of those, about 10,000 were equipment issues, which is what you would expect. Over 3,000 were instrument problems, which again is good feedback. We know we have some opportunities. If you've got bad instrumentation, what value is your data? Right? It's not very good. So that's a good indicator of other problems. And then there were several efficiency issues and a few compliance issues that desk. So it's done some good things. And I don't want to sell it short. It's done some very good things. But it was staffed by ex-operators, folks who came out of our control room. So it was really that backup operator function. But we realized there's a whole lot more potential in this concept of aggregating information. And we talked yesterday about you can't take the human out of the process, right? You can't take the human. Maybe one day we will, but for now you can't. You need that human intelligence to help this make sense. Well, we have that still obviously in our control rooms, but we want them focused on the here and now. So we want to give them the best tools available to see the process as it's in flight, in operation. But by pulling all this data back to a central location and bringing experts in, we can look not just at the here and now, but at the future, doing some predictive analysis of where things might be going. So we decided that you really had to do more than just look over the operator's shoulder. So one of the things that happened to us along the way, and we sort of solved it here, is we are doing a lot of work in the renewable space. We're one of the largest solar electrical providers in the country and one of the largest wind electricity providers in the country. So we've got solar sites all over the country, and we've got wind sites all over the country. So we have two of these renewables operation centers. We have one for the stuff outside our footprint, and this one that we are just about to turn on is for the ones inside the footprint. And that's a regulatory requirement. We have to control those differently. But this, again, looks sort of like those other two desks. It's focused on the here and now, and the only difference is it actually operates those solar, it can shut the solar sites down, the wind sites, et cetera. So it has an operator function for those sites. And we realize you can't do that with a traditional power plant. You need folks on site. But solar and wind are so much simpler that you can do a lot of that remotely, multiple sites from one location. So that, again, it helps with resources. And so these folks in the Renewables Center have some interesting roles. We built a smart neighborhood with all smart houses, with a smart grid that has its own generation, a microturbine, solar, fuel cells, batteries, and so all that's controlled from our operating desk. And also you can see we have several solar sites there in Alabama and Georgia that they're controlling. So that takes care of that desk. But now, one of the things we did not have was a CBM and reliability desk. So we rotate different experts through this desk, a different expert looking at different things almost every day. And we're using multiple tools. Before we just had our plant historian data and one product that did APR, advanced pattern recognition. Now we have 10 to 12 different kinds of tools looking at lots of technology like motor current signature analysis, vibration, oil analysis, thermography, multiple APR tools, and several analytics tools that'll all be focused on looking at the equipment, finding patterns, recognizing failure before it happens. So again, getting in front of the problem before it happens. The next desk looks at efficiency. How well are our sites? And again, we're going to have lots of tools here. We heard from the Aspen folks yesterday. Aspen Tech, we use their IP21, their Aspen Calc, multivariate analysis, reliability. We have a huge reliability database, and then lots of APR stuff. And then the interesting probably desk for this group is we're going to have a control system health and cybersecurity desk. So we're going to dedicate resources in this control center, or this M&D center, who will actually be looking at the health of our controls across our fleet. They'll be pulling in lots of things like obviously process data itself, but event logs, configuration data, control system health indicators. They'll also be pulling in a lot of cyber-related information, event logs, alerts. And I'll just be honest with you, I'm not putting up everything we're doing here because we've got to have a few secrets in our bag, so we're doing some other things that we won't talk about. But it's a level of protection that we don't have today, and it's real-time cybersecurity protection, which is new to us. You know, most of our cybersecurity is process-driven, and it's you go put a program in place, and you stand back and let the program happen, and then you go check on the program every now and then. That's kind of the mode of operation we've been in, and probably a lot of folks have been in. And you've noticed there are a lot of tools that we'll be using. These are not all the tools. Prominent in there is a plug for PAS. We rely heavily on PSS and integrity as part of our platform here to extract that valuable information that we need. So it's a different world. You know, in the past, our cybersecurity was reactive, I believe, in a lot of cases. We put things in place and we assume they work, and we back off and let them work, and if they flag us, then we go check something, right? But here we're trying to get in front of that and proactively see, are we doing the patching? Are we doing the antivirus updates? Are those happening when we thought they were happening? Are we checking our maintenance logs to make sure they actually happened? Does integrity tell us that it happened when we thought it was going to happen? I mean, so it's a lot more proactive and maybe a little bit more invasive, but I think in the world that we're going to, we've got to do that. And one big thing that this does for us is, because of all these tools looking at different data from different directions, you can identify anomalies that, the threats are getting more complicated, and the threats are new every day. So if you have a known threat, you can put in a known protection, right? But unknown threats are very difficult to predict. So our belief is you got to look at enough data from enough different ways that you can see something doesn't look right. Something is not working the way you thought it would. So then our role is, if you see something, say something. These operators are going to say, there's something squirrely going on with this unit, and our advanced pattern recognition says that a year ago, when this unit was operating this way, it looked different than it does today. Then you can go look at all your suite of cybersecurity tools after you've looked at all your technical tools. If the technical tools don't reveal a problem, you look at your cybersecurity tools, and hopefully through all that information, there's some flag somewhere, and we're working on thoughts about our advanced pattern recognition and how you do that, how you find these little weird things. How do you identify those? Because the threat can come from ways that we're not even thinking about in this room today, right? So you got to have, defense in depth. You got to have multiple ways of looking at your data to try to figure out, is somebody doing something here that makes this system behave in a way that I didn't predict it would behave? And that's your clue to go look deeper and try to find problems. So again, there's no silver bullets here, but hopefully the thought I'd like to leave you with is, a lot of times we get so busy that we're focused on the crisis of today. But I think to be effective in the cybersecurity world, you got to think ahead, and you got to do things on the proactive side. You got to think about, how could they cause me problems? And what are some things that I can do? We talked yesterday about the border. We got to protect the border, but as General Hayden said, just assume you're going to get attacked. Assume that you're going to get compromised. What are some of the ways that you'll respond when you are compromised? So one of the efforts that we're also looking at is, how can you effectively respond as quickly as possible and get the units restored to service if they were attacked, if there was a problem? And you got to have really good backup processes. You got to have good current backups that you can implement very quickly. And we've got to get better in our company at testing those and making sure they work the way they're supposed to work. I think that's still a weakness that we have, and a weakness that the industry has. You can do a lot of backups, but do you really know they'll work when you need them? So we've got to get better at that process. But hopefully, it is evolving. The threats are evolving. But if we're creative and we're thinking ahead about what might happen and what could happen, then I think we can stay with them. I don't know if we'll ever get ahead of them, but if we can stay with them, stay with the problem makers, I think we'll all be successful.